About yourself?
Sure. So my name is Jen Armbruster. I'm a 7-time Paralympian in the sport of goalball. I was a military brat growing up. So my father was in the Air Force, and I grew up overseas with two of my older sisters, and my mom and my dad. So we were a pretty close family. Sports was a pretty big part of our lives growing up. My sisters and I all played competitive sports as well as just recreation, and as a family on a lot of bike rides together, a lot of playing 2-on-3 basketball on the softball field. So sports and recreation was sort of what our family did. I currently reside in Clackamas, Oregon, and I work at Portland State University for a few more months. And I have 4 kids, 2 older ones that were out of the house. Unfortunately, our daughter was killed in an auto accident in December of last year. And I live with my wife and our teenage son who's 16 and our soon to be 11-year-old as well. I'm totally blind, like I said, and I use a guide dog. I'm on my 5th guide dog, who's a German Shepherd named Darwin.
Can you tell us a little, well, you already, I guess a follow-up question, could you tell us a little bit about goalball and how you will, how you became a part of the Paralympic Games?
Sure. So I was 14 when I started losing my vision. So I was a competitive basketball player, ran track and field, did softball, things like that. Started losing my vision at 14, and I went totally blind at 17. But they ran an article about me playing basketball, my freshman year, being visually impaired at that time because I had a little bit of sight left. I had peripheral vision out of my left eye. And they wrote an article about me playing basketball, and Armbruster is a fairly unique name. And I was living in Colorado Springs at the time. And a gentleman called me up and said, "Do you want to try this sport called goalball?" And I said, "Sure." It had ball in it. Well, what the heck? So I decided to go ahead and give it a go. So the sport itself is played on the same dimensions as a international volleyball court. It's 9 by 18 meters. The goals go the whole length of the back line. So a 9-meter goal on either end. It's about 1.2 meters high. It's 3-on-3. So no matter what your vision level is, you play blindfolded. So you have to be legally blind to play at the Paralympic level for the US to what they call classify in. But everybody plays the sport itself with eye patches and then a blackened out eye shade as well. Ball's about a guy's circumference wise the same as a men's basketball, but it's got bells in it, but it's dead weight. So it's a 3-pound medicine ball, basically with bells in it. We're throwing upwards of 35, 40 miles an hour on the women's side, around 45 miles, 50 miles an hour on the men's side. So less than a second reaction time. It's, like I said, 3-on-3. Everybody plays with the blindfold on. So your markings on the court have thin string underneath, so you can feel it with your hands or your feet. And then we use the goal a lot to orient ourselves. The ball won't bounce like a basketball though, so you throw it underhand or sidearm. And it's got to hit before what we call the high ball line, which is 6 meters in front of your own goal line. And it's kind of the same equivalent of what the spike line would be for volleyball. It's got to make contact at least once before your line and then once before your opponent's high ball line. So it's got to make at least those 2 contacts, or it's a penalty. If you have a
What are some of the obstacles you have faced in your chosen profession?
I think in my chosen profession, I think, or maybe in general, and just different professions that I had sometimes, I think is people having perception of what they think barriers might be. Like in my case, with not being able to see, not knowing like, well, how are you going to be able to do the computer, or how are you going to be able to supervise staff, or how are you going to be able to do X, Y, or Z because you don't have your vision. And so I think most of the obstacles have been people's misconceptions of what I'm capable of, or what I can or can't do, or knowing the different tricks and tips that you use just for everyday life, right? Or how are you going to get to work, even, from commuting wise, and things like that. So I think most of the obstacles that I faced, rather it's my chosen profession right now, or other jobs that I've worked, is people's attitudes and their perceptions of what, somebody with a disability, in my case, totally blind, have. So it's their own perceptions that sometimes they have to break down those barriers, and educate a lot around it, which sometimes can be very exhausting. And I think you still, I've been at PSU for just over 11 years, and there's still some obstacles I think that I face with people's lack of awareness, I guess, or underestimating folks' capabilities when they have a disability.
Yeah, so a follow-up question to that is what should legislators and local officials do more, show more interest? Sorry, follow-up question, what do you think legislators and local officials should do to help our community?
I think just having more just awareness and education, I think is huge. I think, excuse me, putting in place more trainings for especially even our city officials, right, and our government officials, that there are some mandatory trainings around truly what the diversity, what accessibility, what inclusion, what all those terms mean, and what it actually means to be inclusive of folks in general. Obviously in this case, talking about our community as far as folks with disabilities, I think it's just, we talk about even like our Constitution from a national level, right? Like the right to just be human, right? Have humane, dignity and be treated with dignity and respect. So I think education is huge, but I think even starting with our local officials and things like that, the more educated they are, then when they're making comments or they're making legislation to pass, whether that's in the schools or that's within city limits or that's within county or state regulations, is really thinking about, when I make this policy change, how does that affect everyone universally? And then, like I said, putting legislation in place for universal design, right? Like, what does universal design really look like? And I know that can be pretty tricky sometimes when you're talking about all different disabilities. But I think education is huge, from our lawmakers and our legislators, so they can make educated decisions when they're putting policies or procedures in place.
Yeah, they just help them, in my opinion, just help educate them so they're not going blind when they make laws and changes and stuff.
Yeah.
So what are your hopes for the future improving our community?
I mean, gosh, my hopes, I mean, for I think the disability community in general, I think is for us to, definitely for the employment rates to go up. I think there's a lot of job openings, it seems like, that are out there that are needing folks to work. Or at least every time I go to a restaurant or something like that, everybody's telling me they're short on employees. So I think just my hope would be that folks can, a couple things. One, be employed, if that's what they choose to do, and that we can break down some of those barriers for employment through education. I think housing for folks, affordable housing for folks, I think is huge. And just resources that are in place that, from a supported living standpoint, if folks need some assistance, but to maintain that independence as much as possible. And how do we, what's the best way to have folks supported? I'm not sure, what all the answers are, but I mean, I think ideally, I think employment, housing, and just being connected into not just the disability community, but in our communities, where we live, where we play, where we work, be totally integrated and be just part of that community. It would be my hope.
Yeah. So do you think there should be more diversity when it comes to hiring practices?
Absolutely. I think, and I think there's a lot of proven documents out there, right? The more diverse your staff is, I think the more in general the staff operates and is a better producer, right? Of whatever your product is or your service. I think having that diversity piece, right? It comes to ability, it comes to race, it comes to gender, it comes to all those. The more diverse I think your workforce is, the better off overall that company or that business can operate. Just having different points of views, coming from different walks of life is huge.
What are your personal goals for the future?
So for me personally, as of right now, it sort of looks like I'm done at Portland State in August. So I think it's just finding another job where I can, one, impact the community, and hope to just be able to give back to folks and help, if that's a nonprofit setting, just to give back, really. Like I said, just to give back to the community and do a job that I enjoy doing. I'm pretty passionate, obviously, about inclusion and EDI work for sure. And so the equity, diversity, inclusion piece. And so to be able to just do that, so hopefully to be able to continue to hopefully break down barriers for folks to access, whether that's education, work, recreation, is sort of my other passion. So I tend to go on that side of things. But just any barriers that I can help break down, that's kind of my goal in the future. And then on a personal level, probably just spending more time with my family, and being able to do some more, that we're, like I said, the kids aren't getting any younger. And then with losing our daughter last December, and yeah, so I think that's part of it, just being able to spend more time with family.
Yeah, just to let you know, I put in the questionnaire for the Paralympics for swimming, and my mom started to she's gonna fill out the we found a club, that one of the clubs they have for people with autism. So I know diversity because I qualify, because I guess because I'm neurodiverse, and so they so we're gonna see. Obviously, I started at the lowest level, but obviously my mom's gonna fill out the paperwork, and we're just gonna see we're gonna see what happens. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I don't know if it's a question as much as it's a request that I hope that you stay in touch with me with, especially like I said, as you pursue your sort of dreams to get to that Paralympic level. I think that's awesome. And yeah, and I'll send you my personal email address, because like I said, I'll probably be leaving PSU in August. I think I'll still have a PSU address because I'm still going to teach the adaptive phys ed class in the winter. But just in case, I'll make sure you have my personal one, because I'd definitely love to follow your journey for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Obviously, you inspire me because all the stuff you've done. So
no, like I said, definitely appreciate it. I just want to keep in touch, because like I said, now I have some more free time. I'd love to see if we can get up to some of your meets if they're local enough.
Yeah, so hopefully I make the Paralympics one day, hopefully.
I hope so.
Obviously I'm gonna try to help the PSU program. I gave it to my boss at Nike, so I'm gonna try to help them move forward.
Good.
I get more people I'm trying to get more people for the door at Nike, so
that's awesome. All
thank
right.
you so much for being a part of this interview.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening, Sawyer.
You too.